All right. We're back live one more time. 26 million followers for just chatting, the category. I see. It's interesting. Live for 23 seconds. I've scaled down the output a little bit. The recommendation was to scale even lower. I don't know. As usual, I think, again, the last time it was running smoothly for me, but it was also at pretty low resolution. But it's been a little bit since I streamed. I think, again, I'm dealing with older hardware. And it's maybe just kind of gotten to the point where the processing capabilities of my particular Mac Mini just may not be well suited for the world of streaming. But I am live. I'm not getting any encoder warnings. My frames per second look pretty good. CPU usage looks good. No drop frames. I messed with the crop a little bit for my webcam source. So, I mean, I think we've done just about all we can to set ourselves up for success. Sources. Yeah, everything's looking good. You might hear my cat, Sunny, in the background. Hi. Well, I'm horribly out of practice because it's been a very long time. I don't even remember the last time that I had streamed. I do recall that I had opened, I believe, that Mondo Wolverine. Gotten a little chance to talk about that. I don't remember if I was able to open anything else while I was on stream last time. But it just feels like a very long time, even just societally, culturally. We're in a different world. Succession's over. I don't know. Horrible things are in the news always. I loathe constantly going onto social media. Social media is a self-inflicted wound of my own of my own creation. Insistence. Maybe I was looking for insistence. That sounds about right. But hi, yeah, welcome back. This is Matt Opens Toys, the stream upon which I open toys. I kind of set up using some accessories that were cheaply acquired from Daiso in Austin. I kind of set up what almost passes for like a little, it's almost like a little talk show. Thought it was cute. Thought it was a cute idea. But today is a special day in a certain regard. If you are a Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles fan, as I am, as a matter of fact, I should let some buddies of mine know that I'm streaming so they can come and give me a hard time / join me in chat for this momentous occasion. But let me hop over. I'm gonna hop onto Discord. Boop 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 boop. This is high quality streaming, guys. This is why people tune in and are on my Patreon and my OnlyFans and my Ko-fi and my PayPals and my Venmos. Just sending me so much money because I'm really bringing just that quality, Sorry, I'm trying to get a link to my stream. Ooh, I can kind of see how my stream's going. It looks like it's streaming without an issue. Yeah. All right, great. Copy link. Let me quote tweet my quote tweet. We're live now. now I'm going to go to Discord. And okay, great. Okay, so I've news blasted my the knowledge of me streaming. So that's out to my friends. I expect to see all of my pals, my friends, my amigos in chat. But yes, I'm back. Welcome back to Matt Opens Toys. I'm repeating a little bit of what I just said, just to kind of bring myself back to where I was a few minutes ago mentally. Yeah, so today was a big day if you are a Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles fan. I do consider myself a Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles fan. I've opened many a Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtle here on stream, primarily the Super 7 Ultimates line. I've opened quite a few of those, although I have quite a number that I haven't opened simply because I haven't been streaming. So those are a pretty extensive backlog, including my favorite Ninja Turtle, Mr. Donatello himself. He was a smart one. I value intelligence. Look at my wife, for example. But yeah, today was a very big merchandise day if you're a Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles fan, because it marked the availability and official release of the Mutant Mayhem Playmates tie-in toys. And Target also has a couple other items from NECA that became more readily available today. They technically had kind of been sneaking out, slipping out early. Maybe last week or so is when I started to see some of the first news reports of it. Those particular pieces of merchandise coming out. But I thought, for a while, some of the NECA releases of Turtles were tied into the Target Summer Geek Out event that they're running right now. But surprisingly, they're not. The first 2 weeks have been Masters of the Universe, and then this week I was shocked to discover was actually a DC, primarily McFarlane Toys DC promotion. So I'm kind of I'm kind of okay where I am right now with the amount of Masters of the Universe that I have. I've really been enjoying the line, don't get me wrong, but I think I'm at a pretty good holding position as far as Masters of the Universe. Turtles is just kind of really killing it right now, and I really didn't care about the McFarlane Toys stuff because not a huge DC guy. I have a couple pet characters that I like. Also not a huge McFarlane guy. So, I mean, add those two things together and it's just kind of like, bleh. Don't really care. But yeah, again, more excitingly, today, a lot of Ninja Turtle stuff is out. Like I said, the Mutant Mayhem stuff. There's a Mirage Comics updated Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles 4-pack. There's an updated Target exclusive April O'Neil. That's kind of their mea culpa apology, second attempt at April O'Neil after their first one just kind of, generally speaking, came out and got roasted by the collecting community or Turtles fans in general. But needless to say, I've been eagerly anticipating the release of both the Mutant Mayhem stuff as well as a lot of the other NECA offerings that are coming out right now. And I went out today and I spent a bunch of money. And I got a lot. Got a lot of Turtle stuff. So I was excited to open them up to the point of me enduring the technical hardships of just trying to stream myself opening toys. This is just such an ongoing struggle, and it really is. I don't know if I just need to bite the bullet and get myself a new slightly better processing computer of some variety. You know, I've pretty much only used Apple products for the last, oh my God, like it's getting close to 20 years that I've pretty much only used Apple Mac products. But it would just be so much less expensive if I just got myself a little Windows rig specifically for streaming video. Potentially less expensive, I suppose. I don't know for certain. Haven't been in the market for a computer in a long time. However, I digress. This is Matt Opens Toys. I'm Matt, the titular Matt, and we're gonna open some toys today. We're gonna open a lot of Ninja Turtles because I'm excited to open some Ninja Turtles. I did actually. I mean, in the time since the last time that I streamed, I've acquired, of course, more toys. Not all of which are Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles, but since today is Turtles Day, I decided to go ahead and dedicate our stream today to opening all of the ridiculous amounts of Ninja Turtles toys that I acquired earlier today. Much earlier today, as a matter of fact. I pretty much went within about an hour of open to a couple different targets. And at the third target I visited today, I found the Motherlode and was able to get everything that I was planning on purchasing today. There's maybe a couple Mutant Mayhem things that I might pick up in the future, but I was somewhat fairly exhaustive with the items that I was purchasing. If anybody's in stream, if anybody's in chat, feel free to say hi. So far, I don't see any signs of anybody. Not that you have to, but just if you are there, say hi so that I know that you're there. I'm using OBS. I always incorrectly identify Streamlabs as OBS, but I'm in OBS because I can manage to get settings that work in OBS. But going to remove the cans for a second while I go and pick up some of these toys we're going to be opening. Sometimes I see I think the other day I watched I want to say it was a Pixel Dan review of the new Mirage Turtles 4-pack. And, a lot of people, a lot of reviewers, they have kind of a setup that's a little bit similar to what I have here, where I'm showing off the thing that I'm opening, right? But a lot of times, it's a little classier, a little cleaner. They have just kind of those white backdrops like you do when you're taking a nice photo, especially of like a product photo kind of thing. And they always seem to it zooms really well or brings everything into focus on its own with no effort. And I'm just like, am I just using the wrong kind of camera? Is it, I use for streaming, I have a Canon, like a T7. I think it's just a T7. It might be a T7i. No, it's just a T7. And it does high definition video. I think the video quality comes out nice, but these lenses aren't necessarily like video lenses, so I think that maybe it doesn't do the tracking and focus quite as easily as something that maybe was made for video. So I've been kind of also thinking in terms of the streaming setup, maybe I should just be shifting over to either move my webcam so that, that brings it into focus really easy and then brings me back into focus. So I think maybe I need a video camera because when I put this on autofocus, it doesn't really do a great job of keeping everything in focus. I continue to digress. So this first item is the Ooze Cruisin' figures. This is a 6-pack of figures that is definitely available at Target. I don't think it's a Target exclusive. There's only a few things that are actually like Target exclusives out of the Mutant Mayhem line. But this is for the upcoming movie that I'm very excited to see. Seth Rogen produced. He's not directing. I don't know if he's writing. But the first trailer came out a little while back. And really from the first trailer, I was like, this kind of looks awesome. Looks like it's a great comedic tone. I like a lot of the design and aesthetic decisions on it. It kind of, not quite like a Spider-Verse thing explicitly, but it sort of has a lot more of like an illustrative thing going on. Hey, Mikey. How you doing? Haven't seen you in a minute. Thanks for stopping by. I was just talking about the upcoming Mutant Mayhem Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles movie. Hey, Ryan. Good to see all my friends here. I'm thrilled. I'm actually taking a special trip to go see this movie when it comes out in August. So at the end of July, my wife, Elizabeth, and I are going to be going to one of our favorite vacation... yeah, I see that. One of our favorite vacation spots. We're going to be going to New Orleans at the end of July. And then from New Orleans, we're going to be joining some friends outside of Houston, a little bit south of Houston, kind of closer to the coast. And we're going to go and see this movie right around premiere. But again, I'm a big fan of the trailers that they've released for it. As a matter of fact, I really like the first one. I don't know for sure if I've watched the second one. You know what? I think I did. I only watched it one time, though, because I think Liz and I are both already pretty much sold on this movie. So at a certain point, like when you know that you're going to see the movie, you don't necessarily want to see every trailer because it just kind of starts to take away from the novelty or surprise of the moments when you're actually seeing them in the movie itself. So, but yeah, really excited. Excited, of course, just to be on vacation because I hate working and capitalism, aside from buying stuff that I like. But I don't like labor. You know, it's not the capitalism that's the problem as much as the labor, you know. But this is a 6-pack of toys. It's priced at about $54.99. At least that's what I paid at Target. Which, considering they individually retail about $10 a pop, it's like a minor, mild discount, a decent value proposition because you get all 4 turtles. You get a special deco of Bebop. And you get, this is actually, as far as I can tell, at least until maybe like a second wave of these things come out, maybe closer to when the movie comes out or after the movie comes out, this is the only way that you can actually get April O'Neil, who I've seen some complaints. It's a pretty standard Playmate complaint, though. They always do a really kick-ass job on the turtles themselves, and then a lot of the supporting cast just ends up being like horribly out of scale. Which, I mean, I don't know. I mean, would it be nice if Playmates were to do like things maybe a little bit more in scale, or make some of the bad guys that have a tendency of actually like in the show itself, they're usually like a lot bigger than the turtles in the source material. But then in the toys, they're usually about the same height. I don't know, man. I mean, these are also what you would identify as like play line toys. So these are like toys for kids. And I think it's just kind of, kind of going back to the original Ninja Turtles line. You didn't really have a lot of variation of height, regardless of who the character was. Everything was made in kind of that 4-inch scale. So they've been kind of taking that same approach with every toy line, with the exception of maybe the 2003 Ninja Turtle show. There they worked at a slightly larger scale, but again, I think these are 4-inch figures. Again, pretty much play line, so for kids like me, a mere 37 years old. I think I blocked off my think I blocked off my drawer where all my scissors and cutting devices are. I gotta open this though. All right, let me see what I can do. All right, great. I was able to crack it open just enough. But yeah, I'm really excited about this movie. No hard mode. Hard mode disabled. Really, everything about it looks pretty awesome to me. I think I'm also very open to like different interpretations of. No, this is every implement imaginable. I'm not going to cut myself. Oh, you know what? There wasn't even tape on this. Interesting. No tape. I didn't really talk about the packaging. I mean, obviously, this is packaged in facsimile of the... I think it's called like... okay, it's called the Pizza Fire Van. So normally, not normally, but like previous iterations of the Turtles, like van is called like the Party Wagon, or is it the Party Wagon or the Pizza Wagon? It might be both. But this one is similar. I mean, again, it's just kind of an update. One of the reasons why I'm very open to just like multiple interpretations of the Turtles is because at this point you've had like so many different generations of it that have come out. You had like the original 87. You had like the brief, like, well, I mean, you had all the movies, of course, the 3 movies, which, by the way, yes, I did manage to order. None of you know that this is a thing, but there was a Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles 4-pack that was a San Diego Comic-Con exclusive that NECA put limited amounts up online, and I did manage to secure myself that as well. So it's been a very turtly couple of weeks. But I digress. So you had the 87 cartoon. You've had the comics that have kind of been running in various iterations. Yeah, I'm sure you did, Mikey. You have comics that have been running like alongside all of the cartoons that have come out. Then you had like the more recent Michael Bay produced movies. There's just so many different versions of the Turtles at this point that even if you have something that like is precious to you or you feel is like the best version, I think it's such like... One, it's a goofy property in the first place, but it's also something that really lends itself to just interpretation and reinterpretation. So I don't have a problem with them kind of going kind of far out in terms of their particular iterations of these individual characters. And again, I think like the art direction and everything that they've done for the movie so far, it looks really rad. So, yeah, I mean, I'm pretty enthusiastic about the whole thing, but I guess I'm a fairly easy sell as far as Turtles go. It's a pretty ridiculous thing. But I got the actual toy of this van, too, is maybe why I wasn't making a big deal about this packaging. But the packaging looks great. Again, it's a good demonstration of the art style that they're going to be using for the movie itself. So it looks... I'm just really excited. Very excited for the movie. I think it's going to be great. Didn't realize that Seth Rogen was like a big Ninja Turtles fan, but I mean, I guess we're like vaguely similar in age. And for all the grief that people give Rogen about, you know, just like poor guy, just like his laugh, or I guess the preeminence of stoner comedies in the mid 2000s. He seems like a pretty chill dude. Doesn't seem like he wants to do any harm to anybody. He just wants to, you know, smoke his weed and make his high-end artisanal glass and weed accessories. So, like I said, this is a 6-pack. You get all 4 turtles. Here's the back of that. They give you like a fake interior. So if you want to cheap out on your kids when you're buying them their Christmas gifts, you can tell them that they don't need the party wagon itself because you bought them this 6-pack of figures. I was talking about like the different versions of the Turtles because I guess maybe some people are a little mad about this version of April. I was also talking about the scale issue that always exists. Now, this is a very short figure. That is a very small April. Because if you have seen the trailer for the upcoming film, she's taller than the Turtles, which tends to be the case. Yeah, she's a little mama. I want to say, oh my God, is she? I think she might be voiced by Ayo Edebiri. I'm probably butchering her name, but she's the young lady that's also in The Bear, and I actually knew her primarily as just like an LA comedian that would be on things like Comedy Bang Bang, the podcast, quite a bit. But she's really been popping off recently in terms of getting work. But I'm pretty sure she's voiced by Ayo. But yes, this is a very small rendition of that character. And as with any time that a character that maybe at one point was portrayed as a different ethnicity other than being black, the people online have been really cool and normal about it and have only the nicest things to say about it. But it's funny because now you actually even have, the first time that April was like really portrayed as being black was in Rise of the Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles. But it was still like ostensibly a cute interpretation of her design. Now people are also mad because they made her, a little on the thicker side. Which, God, again, like everybody on the internet just always has the most even-natured and rational opinions about everything. And it's so nice to be online and see those great discussions. And it really enriches your faith in humanity in so many ways. But this is a great little kind of like one and done set of figures if you felt so inclined. Because it does get you all 4 turtles. It gets you April. This is the only way that you can get April right now until maybe she gets her own solo carded release in a second wave of figures. And again, you get Bebop out of this as well, even though the single carded release of Bebop doesn't have the mutagen splatter on him. But these are the standard releases of the Turtles. The only thing that you're missing out on in not getting the single carded Turtles is they have kind of like that classic little accessory weapon rack like the original 80s Turtle toy line had, which is neat. It's a thing that they've been doing quite a bit with like more recent Turtle releases. Even like the Super 7 Ultimate line, they had them with those with recreations of that little weapon rack as well. If you've seen my previous streams, you may recall this. But yeah, so you get all 4 of the Turtles. You just don't get that one little bonus accessory. The only way to get April currently, and you get Bebop out of it as well. So I opted for this instead of getting all of the individually carded Turtles. I figured I would want an April O'Neil. But I did get pretty much everything else that is only available as a single carded figure. But this is the main attraction, right? These are your 4 boys, the Turtles themselves, right? So the packaging's pretty cool. I'm sure these figures are great. I like the designs. And Playmates tends to do pretty well in terms of the main Turtles of any given line that they do. So let's open these guys. There's also, of course, a play set, like a Turtles Lair, that's going to be coming out. Playmates also tends to do really well with those Turtles Lair play sets, like all the way since the original line. But like every subsequent line normally has a couple play sets, or at least one, the Turtles Lair being the most common one. And I think they're always pretty solid. Like they always come out pretty well. And the one for this movie, it's not available yet, but it probably will be by next month. It also looks good. But yeah, so the 2003 iteration of Turtles had like a really good lair. 2K12, which is maybe my favorite version of the Turtles. That was the first time they were in a 3D cartoon. That layer is really awesome. Rise also had like a pretty good Turtles layer. There's rumors that either Super 7 or NECA may do either like a recreation or their version of a Turtles layer for either of those more high-end collector lines. This is a very short April. I mean, she's a little lady. See, she doesn't even sit in the middle of the frame correctly. I'm gonna get everybody out first, and then we can take a look at them. I always like to specify that this isn't really like a review stream necessarily. I'll share my thoughts to a certain extent, but it's not. I'm not trying to convince anybody to buy or not buy a thing. There are YouTube channels for that. This is just the only way my diseased brain will allow me to open all of the toys I'm always buying. Oh, all right, Mikey. Well, you know, I did start the stream pretty late. Appreciate you stopping by. Get some good rest and try and retire early. Yeah, he is an old man. He's a really old man. It's okay. I like this Bebop. The other kind of cool thing about just the fact that there's been so many different versions and iterations of the Turtles themselves is that there's a lot of things now, and like even with this interpretation, that end up being kind of references and callbacks to various prior versions of the Turtles that have come out. So like that Bebop is actually pretty faithful to the original toy Bebop and the 80s cartoon Bebop. Even down to like the gun that he has like a little drill, which is kind of a I don't know how intentional. I mean, I think the guys that worked on the designs back in the old 80s Playmates era, they probably were working a little blue with it because they give the Pigman the screw drill gun, which if you know anything about pig anatomy, it's a bit of a reference. But he always had that gun, like the original Bebop toy had that. The April, like I said, it is not the first time that April has been a young African-American woman. She this is actually a pretty good follow-up from Rise, and really her design is very, very similar to the way that April was depicted in Rise. Rise is the most recent animated one, which has a lot of dedicated fans. I never watched all of it, but certain design elements on this Donatello as well seem to be kind of referencing Rise. Once I get Raph out, he also has some design features that are very reminiscent of his look from Rise of the TMNT. I've watched just a little bit of it, and then I had started to watch. There was sort of a not quite a sequel, but I guess kind of like an epilogue follow-up movie to the cartoon that came out on Netflix. That was really good. One of the things about that is that it wasn't 3D, it was 2D animated. And like sometimes the animation would look a little basic, but there would also be moments in the show where they would just put like a ton of budget and action into like one particular sequence. So there's some action sequences from that look kind of like a well-produced anime in terms of the just like the quality of what's going on and like the fight choreography and things like that. So if you've never seen Rise, then I recommend, maybe just kind of checking out a sequence or two. The main thing that I know is Ben Schwartz, the voice of movie Sonic the Hedgehog, who I guess is also quasi known for his Jean-Ralphio character in Parks and Rec. He voiced Leo in Rise. One of the cool things about the new movie is that I think they mostly did get like actual like teens to do some of the voices. But this Raph, much like that Donatello, has some design choices that are reminiscent of his appearance in Rise. Particularly the way that his bandana isn't a simple across the eye bandana. It's like a full head bandana. Like, I think 2K12 is where they really started to try and like give the Turtles a fairly unique silhouette. And I think that's kind of where they started to make Raph like a little bit stockier than some of his brothers. So now he's kind of like not quite a bruiser. I mean, if you watch Rise, then he is a little bit more of like sort of a bulky bruiser build. But that's really just something that I think was building on some of the design decisions that they put in the 2012 version of Turtles. So I think, again, I think that's kind of the cool thing to see with the franchise at large, is that they tend to just continue to follow up on some of these design cues that get sort of implied in one version of the franchise. And it just lets you do a lot of things with the characters because, of course, like the 87 Turtles, they were pretty much like identical with the exception of the color of their bandanas. And then honestly, even for as much as everybody that was a big fan of the 2003 version, like again, the only real differentiator in terms of appearance for them, besides like the straps of their belts and stuff, was the color of their bandanas. So I like that newer versions of it try and push their design and their silhouette a little bit more so that they're a little bit more unique. I mean, I think that there was elements too of having them have very similar designs wasn't necessarily an inherently bad thing in the early versions because it made it where there needed to be a bigger personality difference to justify why there's four brothers. And then you could kind of, the fact that there is four of them means that you always are kind of able to define their personalities sort of in comparison to one another. Sorry. Which is, again, I think, like, one of the appeals of that dynamic, because, like, when I was growing up, of course I loved Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles growing up as well. Yeah, the initial definitely also helped. But, like, if you were a kid growing up, and if you had, like, the right amount of cousins or whatever, then you could, like, pick who you are, right? Pick the one that you liked best. I remember for one Halloween, me and my two cousins and my sister, like there was four of us, and then my Uncle Bill dressed up as Shredder, and I want to say my mom maybe had dressed up as Splinter. So it's just like, it works out well when you're young to have that flexibility and the differences in personality and even just down to like the color scheme and things like that. Anyway, all of that to say, I just think like they do a lot of cool stuff in terms of just interesting design elements and things that carry over between the different versions. Even like now, they kind of have different shades of green. One of the other four turtle sets, well, a four turtle set that I bought today, as a matter of fact, is based off of the Mirage comics, which, again, in those early, like the Mirage comics, there was, I feel like, almost an intentionality of all of them visually were essentially identical, which can be a challenge, and maybe even like a point of criticism in terms of like, well, why would you buy a 4-pack of 4 characters that ostensibly are identical? But we'll open that Mirage 4-pack hopefully tonight, hopefully on stream. I do want to start giving my brain permission to open toys not on stream, simply because I have such a huge back catalog, and for some reason it's not always the easiest thing for me to stream. So I'd like to be able to address just how many things I still have in box right now that I don't necessarily want in box. But I can figure that that Mirage set is probably going to be a little bit, not necessarily complicated, but maybe time consuming to open. So there may be only a few things that I'm really going to be able to open here on stream. But after I do this 6-pack, I think I want to open that April, because I definitely want to make sure I open the new cartoon April that I got today. There we go. So you got your Raph, your Leo, Donnie, Mike, Bebop, and April. All the turtles are great. Like I said, the turtles are always kind of like the crown pieces of any given Turtles line that comes out from Playmates, because they always sort of go all out in terms of doing really good with the engineering, like giving them a good degree of like playability, posability. They've got a fair amount of like joints. That's really something that I would say they've done really since the 2012, because even for people that maybe didn't like some of the design choices or the aesthetic of Rise of the Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles, I've still seen people that are like, well, the toys of the Turtles themselves are actually still really good and fun. And I think I both acquired and opened those before I had ever started streaming opening toys. So I don't think you've ever gotten a chance to see them here on stream, but I do, again, at this point, I just like that I have different generations of the versions and the different particular aesthetics of the groups of the Turtles. But I think all these guys look good. That April is tiny. That April's very, very short. So for the people that I have seen commenting, kind of complaining about that April, I think it's a fair criticism. When it comes down to what's probably going to be mostly a play line for kids, are they going to care very much about April? Maybe not. I don't know. I mean, maybe she's really cool in the movie and they give her like cool action stuff to do. That's something that the Turtles cartoons and movies and whatnot had been getting better and better about doing with April, of just kind of making her no longer a damsel in distress in the way that she was in the original cartoon. But I mean, again, I don't know what they're going to do with her in this new movie. I'm sure they're not going to have her be a damsel in distress, but is she going to be like a hardcore kicking butt with the ninjas kind of girl? I don't know. Probably not. Ain't nothing wrong with well, I have no problem with short people. Some of my best friends are short people, so I'm very height sensitive and height aware. I like to think that people of all heights should be included in toy lines and media. Um, but again, I mean, these are also very good interpretations of those movie designs. I like the movie aesthetic. I didn't mention it before, but I think Seth Rogen actually voices Bebop, which is again a pretty good, like, funny use of him. I feel like he's more recently between Bebop and Donkey Kong. I feel like he's kind of aware of just like his standing and impression in the general pop culture, and I think he's kind of he's weaponizing it to, I think, good comedic effect. Like I thought he was pretty great as Donkey Kong in the Mario movie. I'm sure he's going to do great in this as Bebop. John Cena's Rocksteady. I mean, there's a pretty crazy cast lined up for this movie. The Rocksteady toy is a little weird. I did buy him because, like I said, I actually did buy all of the single carded releases from this line as well. But he's a tough design, and I would say even more so a tough design to interpret into a actual physical object. Since I'm talking about him, why don't I go ahead and put him up here too? So there's that 4-pack. Let me see if I can arrange these guys on these various Daiso accessories. Hopefully everybody cooperates and stays standing or seated if I seat them. Donnie's always been my favorite. Although I like them all. I like the turtles. Here's the difficult to interpret in 3 dimensions Rocksteady. Again, they went with like a pretty bold illustrative style, which, means very strong silhouettes and things that look interesting in animation or 2D. And since the 3D cartoon kind of has like that sort of like 2.5D kind of aesthetic, which, by the way, there's a lot of things that are coming out that, I really like how 3D animation is getting to the point where it no longer needs to just, look like 3D or look like reality. They're using it to do more interesting illustrative things. And I know people give a lot of credit to Spider-Verse for that sort of thing, which, sure, I think that there's definitely some of that in terms of them making it okay. But I'm even like the new Super Mario Brothers Wonder that they showed recently, like the aesthetics for that are so cool. Like they're finally like applying 3D in a way where it's just like it looks like an in motion version of like the old illustrations that went on the packaging themselves or in promotional materials. And that's awesome, because like for all these years it's like you kind of got away from their core aesthetic just because you were so caught up on like, well, it's 3D now. We're making it 3D and it needs to, look very 3D. But now that they're using kind of all of these different like 2D animation cheats or illustration cheats, it's just like things look a lot more interesting and a lot more dynamic. They're better, in my opinion. Oh no, Raph fell. He took out Evil Lynn. He's just doing his thing for justice. That's how Raph is. But conversely, as you can see, sometimes these bold looks interesting and dynamic in 2.5D or 3D, they can be a little tricky to translate into here's a toy that exists in 3D. Because he kind of has sort of like the look of an elephant, like the Elephant Man. I've never even seen that movie, but from what I recall, which, if you look at the design on the back, like from a movie perspective, yeah, it's cool. It's a strong silhouette. You can pick him out. It looks totally different than Bebop, but in terms of like the toyeticness, I mean, this guy. let me open him. It's Matt Opens Toys. Might as well open this guy, right? These single carded guys should theoretically be easier to open. I was a little surprised to see that they didn't have any kind of like pizza point thing. Like a lot of the previous Playmate lines would make it where you could collect like pizza points, and it was sort of like a proof of purchase. And if you had enough of them, then you could trade them in for certain things on like the Playmates website. Sometimes there was like exclusive versions of action figures that you could only get by trading in those points. I feel like this would have been like the perfect time to do that. What gives, Playmates? Why not? Wow. Even in the way that they had to package this guy, I didn't realize this. They had to package him in such a way that his arm... I guess that was the only way that you could really fit him into this. So these are those accessory racks that, like I mentioned, the versions of the Turtles that are single carded, they come with those accessory racks. So there's probably things like ninja throwing stars and little like gas grenades and things like that I would imagine are probably on that little accessory rack with the single carded versions of the Turtles. If I'm feeling really fiscally irresponsible, or maybe if they do a good sale on them one day, I know I'm already very fiscally irresponsible. But if they're doing like a good sale on them one day, then maybe I'll get the single carded versions, because I'm sure, again, I probably am missing out on a good decent little amount of those accessories and whatnot. Wow. This guy looks wild. You really got to kind of work his arm in there. I mean, very interesting in terms of even just the way that they work out his articulation as a result of just like this really bonkers design. So no up or down motion. He's really just got kind of like a swivel left and right. He looks pretty wacky from almost every angle that you could view this guy from. I'm not sure that he's all that great at holding his accessories either. Ugh. He'd probably hold that sledgehammer that's on his little accessory rack a little bit more easily. Legs are very short and stubby. Looks like he would be able to sit in like in a vehicle that was specifically designed for him pretty well, but he just looks ridiculous, which is great. Like, it's awesome. Honestly, I've opened a Bebop and a Rocksteady on my stream before. The Super 7's Ultimates versions. Those are like really kind of badass, intimidating reinterpretations of the classic toys. So again, I mean, there's cool versions of these characters if you're looking for like a classically cool version, but these work just fine for me. And again, it's a pretty difficult movie design to interpret into an actual toy. So, I mean, God bless them for doing it. A lot of his accessories are, again, kind of references to the classic toy. I feel like some of that's a little bit of Playmates being like seeing what Super 7 was doing with their Ultimates line, since all of that was about reinterpreting a lot of those old figures. I actually started to follow on Instagram. I haven't seen them be as active recently, but there was a sculpting group called like I think they were called like the Varner Group or something like that. But they were the people that actually in the 80s and 90s, they were the sculptors that worked on the original Playmates Turtles line, and so they were a great when they were posting actively, and they may still be. Maybe, you never know when Instagram's algorithm is just, I'm not going to show you this anymore for no reason. But for a while there, they were really interesting to watch, just to kind of see a lot of like development and the like prototype versions and like the clay versions of these things. So I highly recommend checking them out. I don't know who they have developing these toys. I wonder if the Varner group is also still sculpting, because I think that they had worked on even up to some pretty recent ones. But the funny thing about a lot of toy lines, and it's kind of changed a little bit more in recent years, just because now people that work for these toy companies, once like the NDA drops off or whatever, they can talk about the fact that they worked on like certain specific toys. There's artists that I follow on Instagram that they're like the sculptors for certain Marvel Legends, or they're the sculptors for like certain Masters of the Universe. And I think now, if you're like really a hardcore toy fan, then you probably have an idea of some of who the sculptors and engineers that were working on various toy lines might be. That's honestly, even for me, that's like a big toy enthusiast, that's still like a level that's maybe a little bit more intense. But yeah, there's lots of them that are currently active on Instagram, and so it's an interesting insight into some of this that before you would kind of never have any clue who all the people that worked on some of these classic toy lines may have been. So it's pretty cool. In terms of knowledge of who worked on what, one of the cool things that NECA actually does, and I give them a lot of credit for it, is that actually on pretty much every NECA release, at the bottom, they're typically going to tell you who the like they have credits. So they also don't technically classify these as toys. These are considered like oh man, I forget exactly what the term is, but they're an adult collector's item, and they use some term that means basically that they could potentially be fragile, so that you shouldn't expect to play with them like a playline toy. So this, by the way, again, some people had gotten these maybe like a little bit early, but these kind of started to pop up about a week ago. They've been announced for a little bit of time. And again, this is basically NECA's second shot at making a April O'Neil. They did release a cartoon April O'Neil in a 2-pack sometime back with a foot soldier. There's been so much discussion of that version of that April before it came out, when it came out. Not quite controversy, but just a lot of discussion within people that were collecting that line, because they feel like some of the early promo shots of it didn't look like the final result. They felt like the final result looked like they had kind of cut corners, or otherwise sort of needed to compromise in some way. A lot of complaints about like the relative proportions of the toy. So like her head size compared to like her body, whether or not she was going to be taller than the turtles, this and that. I mean, it was just like, it came out and people, I think it kind of left a sour taste in their mouth. Then Super 7 had their April O'Neil. Some people thought it was okay. Other people didn't really like it. There was just like, there's a big demand, I think, for like the, like a classic cartoon April. And so talking about, again, who the sculptors are and this and that, well, there was, I guess, like a customizer / like just a big fan in the community that ended up being the guy that actually sculpted the updated likenesses, the portraits that come with this version of April, unofficially referred to as Ultimate April. Yeah, so sculpt and fabrication, Tomasz Rozajowski. I'm sure I'm not pronouncing that correctly. And Trevor Zammit. So cool. Anyway. Yeah, so this is basically their tacit admission that they needed to take another shot at April. So this is Mutant Interest Story, aka April O'Neil version 2.0. Even this, before it actually came out, some of the promotional shots of it made it look like she had kind of a long neck, which I'll say, in person, I don't really feel like she does. There's some differences in terms of her sculpt here, where she has like a popped collar. In the original release of April, she had her collar lowered. But I think the main thing for everybody is just that the head sculpts, which, as I've mentioned on stream before, are also referred to as portraits. The portraits that come with this April are just a lot better. They really are. The insert of that April, looks a lot like the New York cityscape backdrop that you can get from NECA. They had an actual cartoon deco one that they may end up re-releasing in the future, but they also recently relisted the non-Turtles cartoon version, which is a little bit more of a generic one intended for use with, any of NECA's lines. I have one of those on pre-order with Big Bad Toy Store because of my mental illness. So Ultimate April, she's a single carded release, which NECA's are always expensive. They just are. So even though she's a single carded release, she's $36.99. Not cheap. NECA's also have a tendency of never really going on sale. Definitely not through Target. The Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles cartoon line is exclusive to Target. I don't know why. I don't know why it's a retailer exclusive. But in the past, it made collecting that line a little bit of a pain. But honestly, I've been able to find any of the releases that they've come out with that I've been interested in. So, it's not really overly a good thing or a bad thing anymore. It's just the reality of the situation. But yeah, so she comes with a ton of accessories, and I think it's just to kind of justify her as a single carded release, since she herself is, a relatively average sized figure for the line. And a lot of the accessories that she's packaged with are actually pretty similar to the ones that the 2-pack April came with. I do have the 2-pack April. Trying to decide how big of a pain it would be to get her out of my display case. It wouldn't be that bad, but we'll see. Maybe I'll do a little bit of comparison. It is getting late, I guess. I don't want to be on here forever. Yeah, so why does she come with a blindfold head? Great question. I talked about it a little bit earlier, and I would say up until, until 2003. So in the original, the 87 Turtles, April O'Neil really was primarily just kind of a damsel in distress. So it was a very formulaic cartoon, and pretty much any episode that had April would normally have some point in the episode where she would be in peril. And so I think this is really just kind of acknowledging that. If you look at the packaging, not only is there a blindfold, but there's also like this mechanical device, these shackles that she also comes with, so that you can recreate any of those wonderful kidnapping storylines that happen pretty much every week in the original Turtles cartoon. Bondage, sure. I think, yeah. I mean, I suppose so. I can't. I'm not defending it. I didn't write those episodes. I will not be canceled for the behaviors and actions of writers of an 80s cartoon show. There are multiple portraits or heads that come with this that I would say all are a bit of an improvement over the original April that NECA released. The nice thing is that there's actually compatibility with those heads, so you could actually still use your original April body, and if you just don't like the head that she came packaged with, well, guess what? You can replace it, and then you functionally have two Aprils. Still not an ideal situation. I suppose I agree, Ryan. As long as all parties participating in the bondage are consenting to the bondage. Bondage is, the decision and choice of two consenting adults. In not unusual NECA fashion, there's I would say the joints are fairly responsive. Again, the I was going to try and pop her head off. It's a little tight. Makes it so you may not always be swapping out the portraits, but yeah, when you get it in there, it's I would say in hand, the long neck issue isn't truly an issue. I don't know how her portraits would look on the older figure, but again, as I understand it, there is compatibility. And as much as this April is definitely a damsel in distress, does she? No, she doesn't. Well, the toy April, she also came with a gun. She was like one of the only figures in that line that came with a gun. It wasn't like a common thing. But I think regardless of your opinion on her neck, it would be very difficult to not just admit that this is a better version of April than what their original release was. Let me try and get a little bit of a better shot of her here. Look at that. Look at that Rocksteady. Just being hideous there in the background. Yeah. So at least from a head sculpt perspective, this is kind of sort of the April that everybody had been clamoring for some time. And as far as likeness in comparison to the cartoon, definitely a little bit more accurate to at least the well animated episodes of. She does have a bit of a nut shaped head. The movie Donnie, I feel like it probably is a slightly darker shade, but I think it's also just the fact that he's also a lighter green than some versions have been. But yeah, I would say they made some specific choices with regards to the colors for all four of the turtles. The other thing too is that sometimes it's only their bandanas that have the color, but this is a little bit more, I guess I've seen comments to say that's a little bit more toyetic in that they have pretty much all of their like accessories that are also color coded. So, I don't know. I'm going to get that other April out of my display case so that we can do a little side by side. There's been plenty of this online, but you're watching me, so. As well, I should be. I should be everybody's only source for Toy Talk. For the record, I didn't hate this original April release, but when you have the... Yeah, that's a little bit of the aesthetic for that entire line, since it's meant to be like the cartoon, right? So again, I will be honest and say that when this first came out, not quite, it's not that I was a defender per se, but I did not have the same problem with it that I think everybody at the time did. Granted, I think when this original April came out, she was the only option that existed on the market. So you can see, again, a point of criticism that the original April had. Is just in general her proportions. So a big head. I mean, the head is very, very large. I see. The other thing is, I think that there are some parts reusage between the two. So I would say the lower body is probably, from what I can tell, the exact same. She does have a little bit of the good old Chibis vibe going on. So maybe maybe you can pick up somebody's whoops. You can pick up somebody's old April that they're liquidating now that they have the new hotness. But the other thing that I think is that some of the complaints about the size of her head were indirectly a complaint about the size of her chest. You can also see that with the revised or Ultimate April that came out, they did take a moment or two to correct that particular proportion as well. I mean, at least it seems obvious to me on my screen, and I would also say in person you can see that there's a little bit more going on there. But I like this April. I didn't hate the original April. I do think that this one, aesthetically, in a couple ways, I guess the ways that I've talked about, right? I would say that she is an upgrade in terms of looking a little bit more accurate to some of the depictions of that character in that cartoon. Because here's the thing about the original 80s cartoon. The quality was all over the place. And so sometimes April would look like that. I would say that really primarily in like the first couple of episodes when you had, I don't know the name of the studio, but it was like a Japanese produced animation. When you got into some of just like the run of the mill episodes, that were worked on by certain American animation studios, you know, it would just be all over the place. I mean, sometimes you would get April on the left and sometimes you'd get April on the right. So, you know, I think there's validity to all versions of April. You do get 3 heads with the updated April. So again, if you did want to go back and do sort of a makeshift upgrade, or in Jeremy's opinion, downgrade, you could always choose to You know, some of the episodes are at least very funny. Like it can be funny to go back to and just watch and enjoy as strictly comedic. I remember as a kid it felt a lot more of like an intense action adventure funny show, but I've seen episodes more recently. And there's really like there's no sense of any stakes or drama or anything like that. It's all basically just kind of goofy kids cartoon crap. But I love that goofy kids cartoon crap as well. Again, I'll repeat what you've both said. It was probably my favorite cartoon growing up, and it's led me to make so many decisions as an adult that continue to this day. I don't know why. She's packaged with 2 microphones. Okay, one of them is connected to like a recording device. So she comes with an absurd amount of accessories, including those 2 alternate head sculpts and the bondage gear. So if you missed out on April the first time, or if you just didn't like that particular take on April, then now's your chance to add a pretty solid April to your collection. There's a lot of hands. There's too many hands. I think that's been like my number one comment since I started doing this stream, is just modern toys give you too many hands. At least like quote unquote collectors hands, quote unquote collectors toys. They just give you too many hands. Anyway, I could go over all of these little accessories, but I don't really feel like it. I don't want to. So I'm not going to. Yeah, it is similar to Figma's. I do think that it's kind of the growth in popularity of the import market that has led to American toy manufacturers deciding, oh, you know what? Why don't we also include 50 sets of hands with every toy that we put out? Again, Playline toys, like the turtles that I opened earlier in the stream, they aren't really saddled with the hand problem. But these collector lines, they definitely they just give you so many hands. Well, it's getting late, but there is one final toy that I have been very eager to open. And again, I'm officially going on the record as giving myself permission to open some toys not on stream, just for my own mental health. Yeah. Well, you know, I mean, the idea of the accessories and the idea of like the multiple hands, like they're a nice idea. And if you only have like 1 or 2 toys and you want to just mix up the way that you have it displayed, then you know, it's kind of like fundamentally the difference between having that as a toy or having like a prize figure, unless it's just a character that doesn't have prize figures. There's like the Ranma 1/2 Figmas that it came out. And they came with a lot of great accessories. It came with a lot of great hands. And I know you have a couple of those. But again, I mean, if you find a pose that you like, you may not change it. And that's a character that you can't really go out, sadly, and just get a prize figure. Yeah, I mean, I see where you're coming from. I do like, even though I'm not somebody that does it on the reg, but I do like the toy aspect of it. And so I like the ability to pose and repose and, you know, this and that. So I think, at least presently, statues are not a thing that I really entertain the prospect of. But I can see the appeal, definitely. And I think Well, no, yeah, it's not even that you're lazy. I think that sometimes if it's a statue and it was sculpted, it could be even in a pose that would be impractical for an articulated toy to recreate faithfully. I mean, there's a lot of things, even with Figmas, where like if you're a character that maybe has a very famous pose that involves like sitting with your legs like curled up to your chest or something like that, when you're doing it with articulation, you aren't going to be able to hit that pose. And so they even have it where they kind of like sometimes they'll have alternate bottoms of torsos or alternate torsos where they can accomplish some of those poses that you wouldn't be able to otherwise. Even something like crossing your arms, which is easy, and like there's a ton of characters that would probably do that as something that's like very in fitting with their character. Like none of the toys that I've opened tonight would be able to like really cross their arms in that way. And you'll see like with Figmas, they'll have to sometimes be like, they'll have to have a special set of arms, and sometimes they'll have to have a special set of arms and a special chest just to try and recreate that kind of pose. So they may just be in a pose that's more interesting if they're just the statue. I digress. But I totally see the appeal of statues. I don't have a lot myself. I don't know. I mean, we have some prize figures and things like that. But I mean, I get it. I'm going to get the last thing that we're going to open tonight. And hopefully I'm going to get through it pretty quickly, because I too am actually an old man, very much like Mikey, who left earlier today and probably should be getting asleep not too long from now. Okay. Give me 1 second. Be right back. Really having to make room for this. Why are we going back to the hi Ryan, hi Jeremy bit? I think we've established that already. So look at this amazing box art. Like, just from hello Ryan, hello Jeremy. Are we okay? Are we good now? Okay. Hi Jackie as well. I know you're not. I know Ryan's driving the typewriter, but this beautiful illustration on the front of this package is by Kevin Eastman. But it just looks awesome. Oh, good night, Jackie. Whenever you fell asleep, however long ago. But beautiful packaging. This is the new NECA 4-pack. I was talking earlier in this stream, about how since their inception they've kind of pushed the visual interpretations of the characters to make them a little bit more distinctive from one another. Well, in their original iterations, of course, that couldn't be further from the MO. So they are virtually identical. However, there are things on these toys and in those iterations of the characters that help to identify them as one versus the other. I mean, even looking at this, you can see the heavily scuffed, the slightly more battle damaged turtle there, Raphael, in comparison to Donatello next to him. The only one that has any kind of like visual indicator is Leo, because he has his sword hilt, which gives him the across the chest straps. But yeah, so these are the new They call them the Lawson 4-pack. I don't know if that's an official name or if that's just kind of what is prevalent in the fandom, because these are ostensibly influenced by mostly the cover illustrations of, I think it's like Return to the City, which is an old Mirage story arc. So these aren't like the first appearance, because NECA actually has done a first appearance Mirage Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles set. Not really a set, but they did 4 separate releases of the 4 turtles that look exactly like Eastman's original illustrations from that first comic that they did. But when it became serialized and the comic continued on and they had different arcs and it went on and on and on, and different artists worked on it, this is kind of a little bit more of what they ended up looking like in that comic, at least in parts. And it's also, for me, very reminiscent of the way that they would appear on the covers of a lot of like the NES games that came out with the Turtles in like the early 90s. Which were like really cool illustrations. Like they just looked awesome. They looked completely rad. But again, in terms of like them being visually dynamic, they weren't that. But I do think that that allows you to do a little bit more, trying to put the emphasis on trying to define them against one another in terms of what their attitude or the way that they would speak. You know, it got to be sort of about like those even somewhat minor differences. But I kind of like all the different versions, right? The packaging on this is great. Really like it. I think the turtles themselves also look really great. I wasn't really collecting any Mirage line stuff, but I somewhat kind of decided to as a result of the availability. So I had gotten the Triceraton General, who's a big figure. And when I went out today and I was making poor financial decisions, I decided to just pick up anything Mirage that they had available at that Target. The Mirage line of turtles is not retailer exclusive. So although they are currently available at Target, they typically are going to also be made available at like different specialty stores. So theoretically, all of these different things. So like I picked up the Splinter that they're advertising there. I picked up, I don't think they have them on here, but I have a Battle Damage Shredder and I have a Foot Clan member just to display with these guys. Somewhere in, I guess, the second house that I'm going to buy so that I have room to display all this crap. I don't know. I really might need to just like rotate some displays. But I want to get these guys open. So I'm gonna do that. And then I'm done. It's been a long stream. It's late night. I'm already pretty pooped. It's a pretty hefty little box. These guys, considering that there's 4 of them, but I think maybe as part of the benefit of the fact that they're all kind of identical in certain respects, like they're all the same color of green and they all have the same headband color as well. They do come with some spare hands, but they maybe don't come with quite as egregious an amount as you may expect for a set of 4. There's really just, well, I guess they each basically have 1 set of alternate hands, so there's a total of 8 alternative hands, which now that I'm saying that, I mean, I guess that is the amount of spare hands that you would probably expect. God, they really strap these guys in. I guess that's that bondage again. Oh. You know, I thought I got them all, but yeah, April alone had, I think maybe even April actually comes with 10 separate alternative hands. I keep thinking that I have this Mikey fully like released from all of the different packaging, but I just keep finding that there's something I missed. You may have heard Mikey fall to the ground. So these guys, these versions of the Turtles, they're a little bulkier just in general. They seem kind of buff, which again, I would say to me is reminiscent of how they did look on some of those like NES box art covers. You can see kind of like the April, but in a slightly different way. They also have that implied like illustration lines, the ink lines going across their sculpt to give them that comic book feel. You got Mikey, and you got, of course, Mikey's nunchucks. Man, it took a lot to get him out. I'm just going to get the main turtles out, and I'll worry about their accessories once the stream's over. There's again, as with pretty much every NECA release, the packaging's always pretty interesting or cool. It's got a panel from the old comic. It's always tough with the packaging because like it's cool, but I like the entire point of this thing is that the entire point of this stream is that I want to be able to get rid of the packaging. Oh, the other thing about these turtles. They got them little baby turtle tails. Most of the interpretations of the turtles do not have a little tail. the tail nub. Now this Raph is a little interesting because he actually has a little bit more of an alternate look that he comes with. Because you have like a little cowl and you also have a slightly like injured arm. So even though they visually look very similar to one another, all of the turtles are actually unique, just in some of the minor details. Even down to, again, on Raph, if you compare his chest to Mikey's, you can see that he has a lot more kind of like scuffs and just marks. Even though these are all definitely like the gritty versions of these boys. You've got a nice kind of stoic looking Donnie. Okay. All right, I freed him. Leo. Last of the 4-pack. Oh, yeah. Let's get these guys lined up nicely with one another. And there they are. You got Donnie, Mikey, Raph, and Leo. All wearing red. Very difficult to discern from one another to the untrained eye. But I was pretty excited about that 4-pack. Excited to have some good comic-style turtles. The 4-pack was pretty expensive. I spent a lot of money on Ninja Turtles today, guys. Probably a pretty irresponsible amount, to be perfectly honest. But yeah, that'll do it. That's about it. I'm spent. I opened a lot of toys today. So I still have other things that I can open on stream. There's actually a lot of kind of cool things that I've acquired pretty recently. So I'd be excited to kind of get back on and hopefully do some streaming with that. I found a setting that works. I mean, I think I'm just broadcasting at a little bit of a lower resolution than ideally I would like to, but until or if I ever get a new computer, that's the only thing that'll change that. But hopefully you guys had fun. I appreciate you guys watching. It's always nice to just chat with you, and hopefully we can talk again soon, and hopefully it's not too long before I stream again. But again, for future Matthew, I love you too, Jeremy, and I love you, Ryan, and I love Jackie, and I love Mikey, And future Matthew, you can open things not on stream. Just open like fun, interesting things on stream, and then you can just open other garbage whenever you want, so that you don't have all of these friggin' toys just sitting around. Okay. Thanks, everybody. I'll see you next time on Matt Opens Toys. Good night. Goodbye.